All right, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Good to see you guys. Good to be with you guys for our last week of class. How's that feel? Is that exciting? Kind of? Too much to do? Excited? It's a reminder that finals are coming. All right. Okay. All right. I won't talk about it. Actually, I do want to talk about the finals. But this is what we got going this week. So you just finished your last master in AMP. That feels good. Right? Until next semester. You got some more, but yeah, for this semester. Lab quiz this week over the brain region. So really, if you just study the brain regions like you did for the TBL day, okay, which is really just like, you know, the name of the region and then the basic function that each thing does, that's what you need to know. Okay, so pretty straightforward. You can study those TBL day notes. There's some of it in the intro of the lab too, but it's really the TBL day notes would be the best. But it's what you've already been tested on. It's just kind of getting you ready to dissect the brain, because you'll actually get to dissect a sheep brain, see all those parts, see most of those things, identify those on a real brain. So just getting you ready to do that. Okay, so that's the lab quiz this week. Last lecture quiz on Friday. It'll be over the cranial nerves one that we're doing today, and it'll be over the CNS pathologies that we'll do on Wednesday for our last kind of content day. And then Friday's class will be kind of just a review for the final. Okay, that'll involve a bunch of quicker questions, and yeah, and you can definitely ask any questions you want me to answer then, but I'll also go through a bunch of quicker questions and other things that I want to focus on. Okay, so that's kind of the rest of the week. Any questions about any of that stuff? Okay, just as a reminder here, let me show you when those extra review sessions are this week real quick. So yeah, so we've got, yeah, 2 of them this week. So Wednesday, or sorry, 3 of them this week. Wednesday, the normal one, but then two extra ones, right? So the Wednesday normal one at 8, ladder 101, and then we got Thursday night, Friday night. Okay, so if you come with questions, then you can get those questions answered. You can also just come and, you know, gleam off of other people's questions, but those are good opportunities for you to help you prepare for the final. Okay, go ahead, Trevor. Yeah, I mean, you definitely can't. Yeah. And then you can't go. But, yeah, unfortunately, we can't find a time that works for every single student, because there's 8 sections of the class, you know. So but you can. That's what I mean. Like, even though it says the first part of the semester is on that day, you can go to the Friday one. You can go to the Wednesday one. You can answer any question or ask any question you want anytime. So it's not like you'd be limited to that time slot to answer questions for the beginning of the semester. So yeah, I know it's not ideal that's during the lab time, but yeah, the Wednesday one is during one of the lab times of Dr. Gutierrez's class that's been all semester, and it's just, yeah, it's just kind of hard with everybody's schedules to get it to work right. So that's the best we could do. But yeah, go ahead, please. Say that one more time. You know, I asked the student if she could do that in the beginning of the semester, and for some reason the answer was no. So yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, Dr. Fleischer is the one that kind of manages the students to do that. Yeah, I'm not sure why that was a no, but any other questions about this or about what's going on this week? Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious too. Yeah, I think what happened was we actually lost our student grader who normally graded the last one. So I would be absolutely shocked if you didn't know your scores by this week's lab. So it'll definitely be this week that you get to see the scores. So yeah, sorry it's taken so long. I'm not sure what's gone on there. But, yeah. Other questions? Okay. And then I wanted to show you one thing. Talk about the final for just a minute here. Okay, just so everybody knows, there is a study guide for the final. It's not, it doesn't say much though. You see it right here. Okay, but really what that tells you, it does say a lot, because what it tells you is if you go back to the previous study guides, so exam 5 all the way to exam 1, that's what you need to know for those sections. Okay, before the previous study guide said, here's the stuff you should really focus on, but you got to know everything. That's not the case anymore. Okay. Now it's whatever I said in the study guide before, that's all you need to study for that section. Okay, so that does boil it down some. So go back to your previous 5 study guides. And that's what you're required to know for that. When it comes to the new stuff, then that's just like a normal exam where you need to know the details of that stuff you haven't been tested on yet. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Olivia. I mean, the same way that we've had the whole semester, which is set up a time with me to do it. So I've got office hours on the calendar this week. If you want to sign up, then you can do that with me in my office. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Lisa. Larger as far as per like day of class, but not larger. So it's about, yeah, and that was part of what I was going to talk about. So it's about somewhere between like 40 to 60 points on the new material, and then the rest about 90 to 100 points on the old material. So yeah, so there is a chunk of it on the new material. It's a little bit more per class session, but yeah. Yeah, hey, was that your question too? There's going to be multiple hybrids, yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely a mix of multiple choice questions and hybrid questions. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I know some people like that, some people don't, but yeah, it is what it is. You can close your eyes, I think, after you submit, but then I guess you don't know if you really submitted it or not. So you probably want to do that. Yeah. So, all right. Any other questions on that? So it's a very similar format to the other exams, but again, don't make the mistake and not use those previous study guides, because there's way more information than what's on those study guides, right? So let those really be your guide to knowing like, what do I need to know from each section? I've had students that like just fill them out. I've had students show me their 80-page study guide that they created based on those, filling them in. So you can do it multiple ways, but let those study guides really help dictate what you need to study from each of the cumulative sections. Right? All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, today we're going to get into the cranial nerves. And today's class is kind of fun. Pretty much I'll just kind of run through this first part somewhat quick. And then we'll get to the end, which is a bunch of clicker questions, which is kind of application of the cranial nerves and pathologies related to them. And so, yeah, so we'll dive right into this. This is just kind of a cool little image that's on the background of these slides that shows all those, and you'll get to see this in the sheet frame. You don't see all of them like this, but you see quite a few of them coming out of the sheet frame this week. So looks somewhat like that, minus the cool colors, of course. Yeah, so cranial nerve. So there's 12 pairs that all originate from spots in the brain. Okay, they primarily affect the head and the neck. But we've got one major variation off of that called the vagus nerve. We'll talk about that. There's all kinds of funny mnemonics that you can use to memorize these. Okay, this is the one that my anatomy professor or Bio 1030 professor taught the class. It's kind of weird, kind of creepy. I don't know exactly what it is, but for some reason, the weirder they are, the more they stick in your brain sometimes. So to touch and feel, very good velvet, heaven. I don't know what that means, but it worked. It helped me remember it. So, but if that one doesn't work for you, go on YouTube and just type in cranial nerve mnemonics, and you'll get all kinds of crazy stuff, songs, like all kinds of stuff. So whatever you find works for you. But just to make sure we're on the same page, any mnemonic works with the first letter of each word corresponds to the first letter of the thing that you're trying to memorize, right? So you can kind of always go back to that to get this, right? So here's your 3 O's: olfactory, optic, oculomotor, right? So O, and it just goes from there, right? So, okay. All right, does anybody else have one they wanted to share that they learned from a previous time they learned the cranial nerve? No judgment on the appropriateness of it or not. I might regret saying that, but okay. All right, nobody's brave enough to share their creepy ones, but okay. Yeah. All right, so a couple things about where each of the cranial nerves originate from. And this was in your note package you learned with the brain before. So the cerebrum, we got 4 pairs coming out of the big top part of our brain, right? And then down to the brain stem, the medulla, there's 5 pairs, pons, there's 3, and midbrain, there's none. Okay, so it's really just two large regions of the brain, or sorry, 3 large regions of the brain where it comes out of, where they come out of 4 pairs in the cerebrum, 5 in the medulla, and 3 in the pons. Okay, we got that? All right. Okay, so we'll start with the 4 in the cerebrum first. So these are the first 4, 1 through 4. So let's talk about each one. And one of the things that we'll talk about with each of these, well, pretty much what you need to know for each of these cranial nerves is you need to know the number, you need to know the name, and you need to know the functions. Okay, and so it's easier to split up the functions if you know that the nerve does. Some of the nerves are purely sensory. Okay, so it means they only have afferent neurons in them. Okay, some of the nerves are purely motor, which would mean they only have efferent, they only have motor functions, right? And then many are mixed. Okay, some of the motor ones are only autonomic motor, right? And then other ones are only somatic motor, right? They can actually control skeletal muscle. Okay, so it kind of helps you to group them if you think about them in that way. All right, so number 1, olfactory, super simple. What does it do? It's our smell. All right, so we got smell receptors on the ends of that are smell receptor neurons that are attached to what's called the olfactory bulb, which comes out of here and then goes through those little holes in the cribriform plate that you guys saw in the very maybe 3rd lab that we had this semester. Those little holes in the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone, right? And so those little fibers go right through that and come down. So that's number 1. Okay, number 2 is the optic nerve. Well, just to make sure, sensory, right? Olfactory is pure sensory. There's no motor neurons in the olfactory nerve. Optic nerve is also pure sensory. It is our vision. This is where we get our sight. Okay. But we're going to get into some of the details of this a little bit more than just knowing that. We're going to talk about these little tracks and how the neurons travel through. Okay, so there's a few different regions. One is just the optic nerve. So if we just look on this part, we call this the optic nerve. Okay. There's a special region right here where the neurons, some of them cross over from one side to the other. Okay, so some of the neurons from over here actually come over to this part of the brain. We get the ones from over here coming over to this part of the brain. Okay, and so it could be called the chiasm or the chiasma. Both of those are fine, but it's just this crossing point in the brain. And then once we get to this part back here, going between that chiasm and the actual brain behind it is called the optic tract. Okay, so a little bit about how this works. Okay, well, first of all, we'll call the medial side of our retinas, we'll call that the nasal side. Okay, so on the left eye there, that would be the gray part. Okay, on the right eye, that's the pink part. Okay, so that's the nasal side of the retina. Okay, and it just so happens that all of the neurons that innervate that nasal side of the retina cross through the optic chiasm. Okay, so you can see that here, right? All of this gray stuff crosses through the optic chiasm and ends up on the other side of the brain from the eyeball that it started in. Okay, but then we have the lateral retina over here. It's also known as the temporal side of the retina because it's close to your temple, right? Those ones stay on the same side of the brain that they started on. All right, so the pink stuff stays over here. Okay. All right, so that's kind of the first thing to understand. Questions on that at all? So nasal side crosses over to the opposite side of the brain. Temporal side stays on the same side of the brain that it started on. Okay. All right. So then what we need to talk about is the way light comes into our eyeballs. Light only travels in straight lines. Okay. It doesn't ever make a U-turn unless it hits something and bounces off of it. Okay. So when we're talking about something like the left field of vision, your buddy's on your left side saying hi to you over here. Okay. So the light that we see from him is bouncing off of his crazy shirt, and it's coming in, okay? And so when it comes in, since light can't come in and make a U-turn, it's only gonna hit certain sides of each eyeball, right? The light coming in the left eye is only gonna hit the nasal side or the medial side. The light coming in the right eye is only gonna hit the lateral side. It can't get around and hit the other side. The other side's kind of like in the shadow. You could think about it that way, right? And so what that means is the information from the right eye, that's temporal, so we know that's going to stay over here. Information from the left eye, that's nasal, so we know it's going to cross over. So what does that mean? That means our whole left field of vision is processed in the right side of our brain. Okay? All right, so the light's coming from the left. Okay, so it's in the left eye. Which side of the retina? Which one's that going to be, nasal or temporal? Nasal, good. Right eye? Temporal. Okay. All right, so where it ends up in the brain is C. Okay, so that's our left field of vision. Okay, so we look at right field of vision, same idea. Body's on the right side now, light comes through. Okay, so light's obviously coming from the right side. In our left eyeball, which side of the retina does it hit? Yeah. Now it's hitting the temporal. And then right eye, nasal. Okay, so then which part of the brain is it processed in? Which letter? D. All right, so our whole right field of vision is processed in the left side of the brain. Okay, then what about if we got things on both sides, or we're looking straight down the middle, but we can still see things out here, right? If you put two hands out like this, you can still kind of see your hands a little bit. That's your peripheral vision, right? And so what happens with peripheral vision is light's coming in from both sides, okay? And the majority of the light is going to all be hitting the nasal side of both retinas. Yeah, sure, some of it from here is going to hit over here. But for the most part, the majority of the light hits the nasal side of the retinas. And so what that means, so obviously from both sides, okay, which side of the retinas it's going to be nasal and nasal. So what that means is everything, for the most part, crosses through that B point, that optic chiasm. Okay. And then lastly, we have central vision, right? If something's right in front of us like this, what happens? Most of the information goes to the lateral side of the retinas. Okay, so light comes from the center. Okay, and it's mostly going to be temporal side, meaning that information doesn't cross through the optic chiasm. Okay, so then what we can think about is if we get damage to a certain point, what type of vision are we going to lose? Okay, and so think about this one for a second, and yeah, talk about this with your team for a second, and you can just answer this one on your clickers. Talk with your team, make sure everybody's on the same page. That means talk to the people in front of you and behind you as well. All right, anybody else on the clickers? Got 50 so far. 3. All right, anybody else? Give you about 10 seconds. Okay, so pretty much everybody's saying B. Okay, so absolutely, that's correct. This is actually a common presentation of someone with a pituitary tumor. Okay, because your pituitary gland sits directly above your optic chiasm. You'll get to see that tomorrow in the lab. And it grows and it pushes down directly on the optic chiasm. So it's called tunnel vision, is a common sign of pituitary tumor. Okay, any questions on that? All right. Okay, so that's the optic nerve. It's a little more complicated than just that. That's how we see, but all right, let's go to number 3. Oculomotor nerve. Okay, so this one, this one controls the majority of our eyeball muscles. Okay, also moves our eyelids. Okay, that's skeletal muscle involvement, so somatic motor. And so we've got a few eyeball muscles to learn here. Okay, there's these muscles on the top of our eyeballs called the superior rectus. Their job is to pull our eyeballs upwards. Okay, these are all the ones controlled by oculomotor nerve. Inferior rectus that's how our eyeballs are going to look straight down. Then we have our medial rectus muscles, which are on the medial side, and they make your eyes move medially. Okay, if you contract both your medial rectus muscles, then both of them go medially. Kind of goes into that cross-eyed look. Right? Okay, and then we have a couple that are unique. They're called the obliques. And so we have the inferior oblique, which does this motion right here. It's kind of hard to describe. It's sort of a diagonal motion, but it's up and out. Okay, so it pulls the front of the eye upwards and lateral. Okay, and so it's those 4 that are controlled by the oculomotor nerve. We have 2 more eyeball muscles we'll look at in a second, but those 4 are controlled by oculomotor nerve. Okay, so those are its motor functions. Or at least its somatic motor functions. Okay, you got that? Okay, so the somatic motor functions. We also have some autonomic motor functions. Okay, it controls 2 things for us. Number 1, it controls the size of our pupils. All right, so it contracts those muscles in our iris that are going to shrink down our pupil size and limit the amount of light that comes in. Okay, but then also it controls the muscles that change the shape of our lens to help us focus our light more when objects are up close, or help us focus it less when objects are farther away. And we'll get into all those details at the beginning of next semester of how that works. But for now, just know that it controls those 2. Okay, so motor function, both autonomic motor function and somatic motor function. Okay, questions on those? All right, so we got, we're on to cranial nerve number 4 now. Okay, number 4 is called the trochlear or the trochlear nerve. Okay, it controls 1 more of those eye muscles that we hadn't got to yet. So this one's kind of the counterpart of the inferior oblique. This one's a superior oblique. This one does this motion. Okay, so say the front of the eye goes downwards and lateral instead of up and out. This one goes down and out. Both of them help with rotation. In all actuality, the movement of our eyeballs is really complex. And we're probably not really just using 1 muscle at any point. We're using all of them, even eccentrically and concentrically, but we're just looking at a super simple idea of how they work. Okay, all right, so that's the trochlear nerve. That's all it does. That's all it does is motor neurons for that 1 muscle. A whole nerve dedicated to that 1 muscle. There's a couple like that as we go through. Yeah, all right. Okay, and then now we'll move into the 3 that originate out of the pons. Okay, so trigeminal, abducens, and the facial nerve. Okay, so 5, 6, and 7. All right, so the trigeminal, this one does a lot. Okay, it has sensory information for upper anterior part of the head and skull. So up here, upper and lower jaw region. So sensory information for pretty much all the way from the middle of your head down to underneath your jaw. So all of that sensory input, touch receptors, all the different types of receptors there. Okay, but then motor for the muscles that move your jaw. So your mandibular muscles, jaw muscles that help you with chewing, opening and closing your mouth. Trigeminal nervous controls those. Okay, so that's number 5. All right, number 6 is called the abducens. Okay, the abducens is what it does is it abducts the eyeball. That's why it's called the abducens. Okay, so it contracts the last eyeball muscle we hadn't talked about yet, called the lateral rectus. That's this guy here. So this causes lateral movement of your eye, right? My right eye would be going out this way. When I turn my eyes to the right, I'm using my lateral rectus in my right eye, medial rectus in my left eye. Okay, one thing I wanted to point out here is this really fascinating little structure. We'll talk more about this next semester, but there's a little pulley system for that superior oblique muscle, because it actually starts over here, but then it comes around, goes through a little pulley right here, loops all the way back and inserts over here. Takes more than a U-turn, comes back, and that's how it connects to the eyeball. And that's why it's called the trochlear nerve, because that little loop thing, the little pulley that goes through, is called the trochlea or the trochlea. Super fascinating how that even develops, right? How does that muscle even make its way around, make that U-turn through that little loop and then connect to the eyeball? But that's how it gives it its unique function. Okay. All right. So then, yeah, let's do a little bit of a recap of those first 6 cranial nerves. So talk with the people on your team here. These are the ones that do some sensory stuff. These are the ones that do some motor stuff. There's one that kind of does both. And then go ahead and send in the nerve number that has both sensory and motor functions out of this group here. Go ahead. All right. If you had already sent your clicker answer in, you're going to have to change it to be a number instead of a letter. All right, so you send in the number of the cranial nerve here that has both sensory and motor function. There's only one in this group. Got to be able to convert from Roman numerals to numbers. All right. Anybody else on the clickers? Go ahead and send it in if you haven't. Yeah, almost everybody looks like. Good. So almost everybody is saying 5. Okay, so that'd be V. What's that one called? Trigeminal. Yeah. That's our O2 touch. So that's the touch in my mnemonic. Okay. So the sensory one that does smell, go ahead and just yell it out. What's it called? Olfactory, sight, optic, touch, and chewing muscles. Gemini, that's what we just talked about. And then we got three different ones that control extrinsic eye muscles. What's the one that does most of them? Oculomotor, right? And then the A one, abducens. Which muscle does the abducens control? Lateral rectus. It abducts the eyeballs, right? Moves them outwards. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Any questions on those? Yeah, and just definitely key to remember the oculomotor does more than that. It does intrinsic eye muscles and it does those eyelid muscles as well. Okay. Questions on these first six? Good. All right. Let's keep going then. All right. Facial nerve number 7 here. Okay. This one was also from the Pons, but we just took a break after 6. Okay. So this one has all 3 types of function as sensory. So this is taste on the anterior 2/3 of our tongue. All right. So if we break our tongue up into thirds, this whole front part is innervated by our facial nerve. Okay. Motor function. Most of our facial expression muscles are innervated by the facial nerve. It's really where it got its name. And then it stimulates our lacrimal glands, which are the glands in our eyeball to create our tears. Okay. It also stimulates our salivary glands to produce saliva right down here and here. Okay, that's the facial nerve. Number 7. Okay. Number 8. Oh yeah, here we go. First, now we'll move into the last ones that are all come from the medulla. Okay, so we'll start with number 8. Number 8 is called the vestibulocochlear nerve. Okay, so this one's all sensory. So sensory information from the inner ear. Okay, and we have it branches into 2 different nerves. As you can see here, one that goes to the cochlea, the other one that goes to the vestibular apparatus. And we'll talk about the details of how these things work next semester. But the vestibular apparatus helps us with knowing where our head is positioned and how our head's moving. And then the cochlea is hearing, as well as dizziness and nausea are related to the cochlea as well. So that vestibulocochlear just splits into the cochlear nerve and the vestibular nerve as it comes down. So cochlea means snail, so the thing's kind of curled up like a little snail. All right. Okay, so that's number 8. Number 9 is called the glossopharyngeal. This one is the one that does the back part of our tongue for taste. So that's the posterior 1/3 of our tongue. Okay. Also sensory information from the back of the mouth and the throat. Okay. It does have some this one again has all 3 types of function. So it has motor input to the pharynx, which contracts the muscles in our throat that allow us to swallow. And then it also stimulates some of our salivary glands that weren't stimulated by the facial nerve. See one up here in particular. All right, so that's number 9, glossopharyngeal. Then we move to number 10, which is the vagus nerve. Vagus means the wanderer, like a vagrant, right? It's the same type of root there. And it's called that because it just goes all over the body, right? All of the other ones just stayed in the head of the neck. You can see this thing is everywhere, okay? Responsible for most digestive functions, most urinary and defecation type functions, responsible for reproductive functions, responsible for heart rate control, responsible for some of our lung control. It's just everywhere, right? The vagus nerve is pretty much controlling most things in our core. Very, very important parasympathetic function. Okay, so it also has some sensory function in our lower throat and in our abdominal organs. Motor function, our tongue and our throat. And then parasympathetic function is just 2 of them. There's many more. It decreases our heart rate and also increases digestion. This is part of the parasympathetic, right? So this is like not fight or flight, but the other, the housekeeping functions. Slow down our heart rate, digest food. Okay. When someone gets what's called the vasovagal response, this is when you either see blood or you actually have a little bit of blood leaving you because you've got your finger pricked or something. And there's this whole response that pretty much drops your heart rate drops your cardiac output so low that you don't get enough blood up to your brain. And your body wants you to be horizontal instead of upright. So you pass out. And that's the idea. The vaso is your blood vessels, right? And then the vagal is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve gets stimulated, actually causes your blood vessels to relax and open up. That drops your blood pressure, as well as your heart rate drops. And so you don't get enough blood to the brain and you collapse, which is actually what the body wants you to do, so you can get blood up into your brain, right? Not fighting gravity anymore. Okay, two more. Accessory nerve, number 11. Okay, this is motor function of two muscles, one called the sternocleidomastoid, which you guys know about, right? This one right here that helps rotate your head. Comes off the mastoid process, splits off and goes to the sternum and the cleido or the clavicle, right? And then our trapezius muscle, our big scapular elevator and retractor. Trapezius. Okay, then finally the hypoglossal nerve. This one has motor control of both the intrinsic and extrinsic tongue muscles. Extrinsic tongue muscles move like your whole tongue, like left or right or up and down. Intrinsic muscles help you change the shape of your tongue, right? This is how you can fold your tongue in half, or some people can make like a flower with their tongue, different things like that. So those are the intrinsic muscles. Okay. All right, so that's number 12. So let's do a quick recap here. Okay, another one, fill in these different things here. I don't think I have a clicker question ready for you, but go ahead and fill this in. We're going to get into a bunch of clicker questions here in a sec.
Yes.
All right, guys, let's go ahead and just wrap this up so we can move into the clicker questions at the end here. We can have enough time for most of them. Hopefully, there's quite a few. All right, so the sensory ones here, hearing and equilibrium. Which one's that? We have the vestibulocochlear, okay, and then we have sensory for both taste and facial muscles, but also some motor for those glands. Okay, what's that one? Yeah, that's our facial. Okay, I don't know which way this is going to go. There we go. So taste and swallowing muscles, as well as some salivary glands. Glossopharyngeal. Okay, taste and swallowing, and then smooth muscle of the glands of our viscera and thoracic and abdominal cavities. Lots of other things. What would that one be? Vagus, yeah. And then we got two that are purely somatic motor. Yeah, the neck and shoulder muscles. That's our accessory. And then finally, the one that controls our tongue. What's that one? Hypoglossal. Good. Okay. Any questions about those before we move into these quicker questions here? Okay. All right. So this just has a little table that kind of summarizes everything for you. I'm not going to go through that, but you can refer back to that if you want. And yeah, so we're going to run through some quicker questions here. All of them just have a have an answer that's just a number. Okay, so just put in whatever cranial nerve you think is implicated in the description of the pathology. Okay, and please talk with amongst your team on all of these as we're going through. Okay, here we go. Go ahead. Answer this one. All right, so send in that number. Give you about 10 more seconds. Make sure you talk about the name with your team as well, so you're on the same page, not the number and the name. All right, maybe 2 more people. I think we're almost there. Good, okay. All right, what do we got? Good, so everybody is saying 8. And what's 8 called? Cochlear. Okay, good. Let's go on to the next one. Some of you have had this experience. You had your eyes checked. You gotta wear dark glasses the rest of the day, right? Okay, so you're just putting that number in your clicker. Make sure to hit send. All right, it's about 5 more seconds. Need a couple more of you. All right. All right, see what you guys said. Good. So yeah, almost all of you are saying number 3, or oculomotor. Sorry, I was messing that up. Oculomotor. There we go. Okay, here we go. Another one here. Time will get a little shorter each time, so we can actually try to get through all of them. Give you about 45 seconds for this one. All right, about 5 seconds. Anybody else? Make sure to hit send. All right. Gonna go ahead and shut it off. Good. So pretty much everybody's saying number 1, the olfactory nerve, and this is definitely something that can happen. It's called anosmia. When you have damage to your face, you can lose your sense of smell. All right, this one. It's not only the function can be lost of things, but sometimes you can have hyperactivity of neurons that get damaged. All right, go ahead and send it in. Make sure you hit send. All right, give me about 5 seconds. So we're kind of between two answers on this one. Some of you are saying 7, some of you are saying 5. 5, trigeminal. 7 is tempting because it's the facial nerve, right? But most of our sensory input comes from the trigeminal nerve of the face and then motor of those facial muscles with the facial nerve. Okay. All right, Ernesto.
But I guess it's damage, not on the eyelid. What do I look like?
All right, about 15 seconds. All right, 5 seconds. Make sure you hit send. All right, anybody else? Okay, so cranial nerve number 3, oculomotor. Remember that was a little asterisk, also controls eyelid muscles. Okay, here we go. Already did this one. This one should be pretty simple. Probably should have just skipped it, but it didn't. We should have time to get through them all. I'm going fast. I'm pushing you guys. All right. About 10 seconds. Okay, anybody else? Make sure you hit send. There we go. Good. Okay, so the vast majority of you are saying number 2, optic nerve. Okay. All right. So what about here? Well, this one needs to go back to numbers. Let me do that. I mean, not to numbers, but to letters. All right, talk about that with the people around you. Make sure you're all on the same page with this. Left eye, left eye. Okay, talk about it with your team. We're between A and C. You guys are between A and C. Make sure you're on the same page. All right, about 10 seconds. So this isn't one we talked about before, right? But everything from the left eye has to pass through only one place, which is A, right? That's A. That's not the same thing as the left field of vision, right? The left field of vision is different than the left eye. Luckily, we can use both of our eyes for each field of vision, right? So if you lose an eye, doesn't mean you can't see it all on the other side. You still can, right? Which is a nice feature of this. Okay. All right. This is the one that I'll skip. What's the answer here? Okay. All right. Then let's do this one.
She can't see her left visual.
Standing over here.
So left, and then it should here. See.
So you always got to look at where it says which eye is which, right? Which eye has the left eye, which has the right eye. That tells you where the left field of vision is going to be, or the right field of vision. It could be an image that's kind of flipped in such a way that you can't tell which one's which. But just always looking. It'll tell you which eye is which. Okay, send it in if you haven't. Hit send. All right, so we have about 85% of you saying C, and then a few saying D. Okay, so C is definitely the right answer here. Okay, because we're going to get info from this side of this retina, which is going to cross over. Info from this side of this retina, which is going to stay there. Yeah. All right, next one. All right, back to numbers here. All right, go ahead and send it in if you have it. About 5 more seconds. One thing to know, you guys, the cranial nerves are so important because they're going to come up all next semester. The very first lab quiz next semester is all the cranial nerves again, just to get you ready for that. They'll come up in almost every organ system we talk about next semester. So if you know them now, you'll be set up for next semester. All right, this is it. Only 12. All right, yeah. So pretty much everybody said 11 there. Accessory. All right, this one. All right, give you about 10 seconds. Pushing you, only got 3 minutes left. All right, looks like most of you are in there. Okay. Number 6, abducens, right? Controls which muscle? Lateral rectus. All right, a couple more here. Go ahead. All right. Make sure you hit the send button. Okay, so most of you are saying number 12, hypoglossal. All right, this one is actually a common condition, common side effect of a viral infection. Yes, most of the time. You've had it? Yeah. Twice. Wow. Yeah, those ones. All right. Make sure you hit send. All right, so most of you are saying number 7, facial nerve. This is known as Bell's palsy. All right, we don't have to send in the last 2, but we can just talk about them. What number do you think this one is? What muscle is he testing right there? Sternocleidomastoid, right? So that's the accessory nerve, number 11 again. And then lastly, gag reflex. This would be glossopharyngeal, those muscles of the throat. Have difficulty swallowing. All right, guys, we made it. See you on Wednesday for our last day of new content. Have a great rest of your day.
I'm gonna say yeah.
Do you think I could set up office hours to review some of my old tests?
Sure, yeah, you can, I mean,
So
you
I
just,
just go onto the campus.
Thank you.
I can just sign up for a time on there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
that's it, yeah, you may wanna do a
Thank
couple
you.
of, go do multiple exams. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, okay, sounds good. Thank